I'm not going to sugarcoat this, but I was incredibly slow when it came to writing this script. 2 updates happened, or technically 3 happened between the time I was writing the script alongside the helmet video, then I got back into Fallout New Vegas and basically played that game every single day from morning to night.
It's my invention, my property, mine! Now be a good courier and deliver it!
And now I have university starting real soon, have a surgery due in a couple of days as of recording this, so now I feel like half-assing this video one way or another, but for all intents and purposes, I'm going to try my best not to. Anyways, this game was pretty surprising to me in a few ways. Its origins, the gameplay, and something that made me pretty upset about the game, so let's get into it. We all know how popular zombie games are on Roblox. I've already covered 2 of them, that is if a Plants vs Zombies fan game counts. And right now, tons of games based on the classic Call of Duty Zombies game mode dominate the zombie survival genre.
Your screams are so erotic.
There are a couple of zombie games that aren't based on COD Zombies on Roblox and are more based on other popular zombie games like Left 4 Dead, but they've either died out or are pretty insignificant compared to the other giants on Roblox like at one point Reason to Die. Once in a while there's a zombie game that stands out like Zombie Stories or the classic Undead Coming and Zombie Tower, which are the 2 games that didn't survive the test of time unfortunately. However, when it came to the former, which is the Undead Coming, initially made by a guy named Stealth Pilot or Scorpio Pilot, there were a few reasonably successful attempts at resurrecting the game. Not counting the times it got copied by other users like the infamous but now forgotten Jared Valdez 8, the Undead Coming is one of the last few classic Roblox games I really didn't expect to have a comeback. But it did, first as a remake by Never Die Interactive, originally AAA Batteries, who've since discontinued their version in favor of making a game called Bombline, which is okay I guess, I've played it a couple times.
What are you aiming at? What are you aiming at?
What the fuck?
And eventually a version of that remake by Muscle Embassy, which is the one I'm talking about. As a preface, I really did enjoy the game. I thought Armageddon set itself apart from the other similar zombie games by implementing several great balancing changes, and it was done in such a way that it actually improved on the experience instead of hurting the quality as I had initially assumed. However, even with that being said, I found a lot of the balancing aspects, new features, and maps of the game pretty unsatisfactory, which will get increasingly obvious towards the end of the video, given that there is something that I really do want to talk about. Anyways, let's get into it. For those who haven't played the original Undead Coming, or those who have, the gameplay between the classic and the remake are pretty similar with several changes. However, that's not really all that important outside of technical limitations, advancements in the Roblox engine since 2009, some new content additions, and the obvious year gap between the games, so I'll just focus on Muscle Embassy's Armageddon iteration. Most of the footage I'll be using for these sections will be pretty outdated. As to why I'm not using up-to-date footage, it's totally not because I want to foreshadow anything. Moving on, Armageddon mostly follows the same trends as the previous iterations, with a dedicated lobby, spectator mode, a player versus player PvP element, weapons, obviously, and cosmetics. In the latest update, cosmetics were given to zombies and are no longer exclusive to just survivors, but to get those skins, I'll have to explain pretty much everything else first since it's a lot more important than going around looking like an idiot. First and foremost, to join a game, you have to ride a train that arrives at the lobby when a round is about to start. Alternatively, if a round is already ongoing, you can just type /join or enter a green glowing door that lets you be a zombie. Since most new players will be drawn towards playing as a survivor, and it's like that by default, you'll be given a simple pistol. From what I can remember, it's a fairly decent starter gun. AI zombies do spawn, so zombie players are assisted by bot-controlled zombies, making it a little harder for survivors to win. Before that, you can do a couple things in the lobby. It's mostly just fluff and filler content, but the most important is that you can shop for in-game items and vote for maps during the intermission. For voting specifically, there are a few modifiers to that can be applied to a round during the voting stage, so you occasionally have to play on 4 modifiers: Noob Mode, Hardcore, and Lights Out. Noob Mode cuts the zombie health down and how often the zombies spawn. Hardcore mode though does the opposite, increasing zombie health and how many AI zombies can be on the playing field. Finally, there's Lights Out, which darkens the map. That's all I can really say about Lights Out.
No
get those lights off!
I didn't get a chance to try out Blood Moon since no one votes for it, so from what I've heard, it's basically just hardcore mode with a red fog filter. From there, you mostly just survive. And survive. And survive some more. Yeah, the game's premise is pretty basic and the formula doesn't really deviate in terms of gameplay or game mode, with the only major difference being the 2 game modes currently in the game, which you also get to vote on depending on whether the map has it as an option: survival and evacuation. Some of these maps also have areas covered in gas or toxic zones, forcing you to wear a gas mask that you spawn with, for now, to traverse safely. Some zombies though can create gas, so wearing a gas mask is key to survival. Gas masks don't last forever. To refill them, you'll have to find a hazard zombie and kill them, which they'll drop filters on a gas mask. I'll explain more down the line. The game does feature a killer soundtrack made by the team, which are mostly remixes of classic ROBLOX songs, which I'll briefly play here. Moving on, at the end of a round, you earn a certain amount of silver bricks, which is the primary currency. If you have the VIP Game Pass, you also earn gold bricks, which is mainly there for cosmetics. Moving on to the zombies, unlike the previous versions of the Undead Coming, the new Muscle Embassy team have chosen to allow players to voluntarily play as zombies, which is, at least for me, completely new territory. The previous iteration of the Undead Coming randomizes player and zombies team, but for Armageddon, they've instead opted to allow full survivor teams should survivors choose not to volunteer as zombies, with the zombies consisting of AI, which is a pretty cool idea. Anyways, to volunteer as a zombie, when you're in the train and transitioning from the lobby to the map, you can click on a button that asks you whether you want to be a zombie or not. Keep in mind you'll only count as a volunteer if you do so during this very moment and not at any time, and sometimes, depending on server size, you might not get the chance to be a volunteer zombie. Volunteering as a zombie or playing as a zombie regularly is just you going after the survivors under a time limit as dictated by the game mode. The actual gameplay of being a zombie is pretty standard for a zombie game, which you would have seen if you've played either the classic Undead Coming game or are familiar with other games like Reasons to Die, Undead Strike, Dead Slate, and Dread. You've obviously gone the regular and special infected. To play as them, you need to gain red bricks by punching or eating human players, with all special infected having a certain amount of red bricks needed to spawn as them. For each zombie, they have certain rules exclusive to each and one of them. Firstly, the regular zombie is cannon fodder. They don't cost any red bricks and aren't that powerful, but it's easy to hit multiple survivors at once, and you mostly use regular zombies to build up a lot of red bricks, allowing you to play as more specialized infected. The new update also lets these regular zombies deal even more damage or have more health. Secondly, there's the crawler. They crawl on the floor and are very fast, but they have weaker health and, at least in my experience, don't hit as hard without the right upgrades. The new skill tree though can give crawlers the ability to leap across the map, which is cool, I guess. They cost 3 red bricks to spawn. Thirdly, there's the chargers. They're not as threatening as the ones you probably imagined from Left 4 Dead 2, but Armageddon's chargers stun on hit instead of hammering down a survivor they catch. They also have a crazy turn radius, so chargers don't go in a straight line, which is offset by the long charging cooldown, though you can decrease the cooldown with upgrades, and they cost 10 bricks to spawn. Next, there's the Kami zombies, short for Kamikaze. Not to sugarcoat it, but they're basically Left 4 Dead boomers if they were shit. Normally, I'd consider them to be useless, expensive cannon fodder because they cost 9 red bricks to spawn, but thankfully Kami zombies actually got better with upgrades, like the ones that increase the Kami zombies blast radius or just straight up releasing gas as per the latest update. Speaking of gas, hazard zombies next are essentially mobile spitters from Left 4 Dead 2. Please ignore the fact I keep using that game as an allegory, it's the only way I can think of to introduce these new zombies. Hazard zombies cost 20 red bricks and spit gas balls that create a cloud of temporary toxicity, which serves to punish camping survivors. They also drop gas masks upon being killed by a survivor, which they can pick up to either refill their gas mask or, in rare circumstances, get a cool visual changer. Again, like the Kami zombie, they suck at first, but they get better with upgrades. Finally, there's a tank zombie. They're the most expensive special infected to play as, costing 50 red bricks. Spawning as a tank zombie will cause the entire server to be alerted by them, and while multiple zombie players can play as a tank, there's a short spawning cooldown before another tank zombie can spawn. I won't lie, but tank zombies are absolutely ass without upgrades. Sure, they're slow and, as their name suggests, tanky as all hell, but I mean, survivors who are smart enough to avoid being cornered can just run away from tanks because they're just faster. Plus, a coordinated team can wipe tanks out easily, especially if the survivors has at least one minigun user. Once again, like Kami and Hazard, the tank gets better with upgrades. And what I mean by better is by turning a tank from an expensive bullet sponge that deals pitiful damage to Server Annihilator 9000. At the end of the round, regardless of whether you win as a zombie or not, you earn a new type of currency introduced in Armageddon that's exclusively used for zombie content. Anyways, currency is a somewhat big part of Armageddon. You mainly use it to get new equipment for survivors, which is split into 3 categories: weapons, utility, and throwables. More importantly, if you want to customize your character, be it with weapon skins, emotes, yes this game has them, or player cosmetics, you can use silver bricks to buy crates. You can also use gold bricks on these crates to guarantee an item drop that isn't a duplicate.
I messed up the recording on this part, but basically you can use red bricks to get zombie stuff like skins and upgrades as part of the skill tree from the newest, well not the newest, but the latest update as of the beginning of July. The original upgrading system was pretty flat, but the new one gives the old system up in favor of a more diverse upgrading system, which I guess is cool, but you're going to hear me complain about it soon.
That's just about the basics however for the game. To really experience it, I highly suggest trying it out for yourself, first and foremost, that is if you ignore my foreshadowing, and the way I describe the game doesn't really do it any justice, so again, just try it out for yourself. So moving on, how's the game? People are probably going to stereotype me for this, but yeah, I like this game. A very brave and groundbreaking opinion that's totally not been joked to death. The past tense of liked is, once again, definitely not foreshadowing. Anyways, I thought this game was pretty good. For some pretext, I should mention that I have played almost every prominent version of the Undead Coming, including the classic version, but mostly because Jared Valdez 8 made a copy of the game, then I played another restored copy of the original game when it was part of ICT's community under a different username. Fast forward a few years, I find out about Never Dies remake of the game, and I thought the game was good, but not quite enough to keep me coming back. But with Muscle Embassy's Armageddon version, I thought it was great. There's no better way to describe it, honestly. I really do believe that Muscle Embassy at this time did a great job fixing the issues that Never Die encountered while making their Undead Coming remake, with the biggest dilemma of trying to figure out how to make zombies fun solved in such an interesting way by Muscle Embassy that I hadn't really thought of before. Simply letting players volunteer to play as zombies instead of forcing them to. This completely solves the problem of randomizing teams. Games like Reasons to Die, Dead Slate, Dread, and an insurmountable number of other similar PvP zombie survival games suffer from the inability to make zombies fun to play and to balance the odds between survivors and zombies. What those games did was to make the special infected strong, but it doesn't do the zombie team any favors when the survivor team is usually so fucking strong. Any special infected that could counter a good survivor team being locked to RNG, which is an issue that most of you unfortunately would probably be all too familiar with if you happen to be a former fan of Reason to Die like I was. Simply giving players the option to volunteer to play as a zombie was really a solution I had never thought of, but it's executed in such a genius way that I can't believe I found myself genuinely enjoying playing as a zombie. Usually I would just go AFK and wait for the game to finish, but the fact that you can also choose what zombie to spawn as instead of having to pray you spawn as a good zombie is great. As easy as it is to play a survivor, which is more rewarding to play, zombies is just more fun. Sowing chaos among that team with a variety of special infected that I can play at any time as I want as a zombie, as long as I have the red bricks for it, just makes it a significantly more enjoyable experience than struggling to slap a survivor as a regular zombie. Also, zombie upgrades aren't temporary like in Reason to Die and is kind of permanent, so you can run with a certain zombie build, so to say, for each playable infected, thus diversifying the experience somewhat. Now that I'm done glazing the ever-loving shit out of the zombies, I should clarify that playing as Survivor is still enjoyable. It isn't as fun as zombies since, well, it literally plays like any other PvP zombie game where you just go around shoot zombies while praying they don't kill you and rob you of your rewards, but I feel like where Armageddon succeeds the most while other contemporaries struggle to achieve here is to make playing Survivor feel tense. Most of the time at least. But like most of the time I'm playing on a full Armageddon server, it really well and truly feels like every moment and every decision made could be a life or death situation, especially if you don't know if the player zombie you've encountered is secretly the strongest motherfucker on the server that can stab you to death in a heartbeat. Anyways, what's there to complain about? Obviously a lot, but here's what I didn't quite like about Armageddon. First off, I think some of the maps aren't challenging as a survivor, combined with the fact that Armageddon's map pool isn't as diverse as Never Die's version of the Undead Coming remake. Prison, house, ZombieCon, which is based on a now forgotten zombie game of the same name, Yacht, if that's what it's called, and Arena felt too easy for survivors to win on, but combined with the other maps, there really isn't any other truly difficult maps to win as survivor on when the actually challenging ones, like the one based on the classic McDonald's zombie game and another one taking place in a church, which is lost media I guess because apparently nobody recorded footage of that map even though that I remember how it played. I mean, given that the maps I just listed is basically composing majority of Armageddon's map pool, I'm indirectly calling everyone who struggles on this map as a survivor as having a massive skill issue, but come on, by the time you reach better guns you realize that these maps are just too easy. What I find particularly easy about those maps is the lack of natural toxic zones. These maps give survivors way too much maneuverability. Very few maps still keep the oppressive toxic zones, which I really liked since it forced me to stop being cocky with how I play Survivor and plant myself in a certain area, which gives zombies a lot of opportunity to come kill me. Likewise, playing as a zombie means that Survivor weakened by toxic zones or the hazard zombie's gas attack is easy prey, so it gives you a lot of tactical decision making to do that you have to think up on the spot, since it's literally game changing and determines whether you survive or else the zombies will eat your ass. Arena is an extremely egregious example of this, where the map literally has zero toxic zones, meaning survivors can just run all over the place without really worrying about having to put on a gas mask, or at least until you encounter a hazard zombie. But even then, it's still pretty easy to ignore a hazard zombie's gas zone. Okay, it's pretty easy to survive on some maps as survivors. What about the zombies? As fun as zombies are, they're not equally balanced. Simply put, some zombies need upgrades to get better, which I've already said in the gameplay section. Crawler is the best at tickling survivors since they're hard to hit and can be annoying enough to distract survivors from the real threat of other zombies. But like, that doesn't account for over half of the zombie roster being utterly dogshit without upgrades that either increase their health, walk speed, or damage. Tank is especially a massive victim of this, since they actually have a pretty small health pool without any upgrades and have comparatively low damage, so survivors can just massacre low-level tanks right out of the gate. Kami was, at one point, literally useless, but was thankfully made better with the latest update's new skill tree for zombies, which I will explain later. Hazards though, I barely played them before the update. They were just as useless as the Kami zombies, if not worse, and was only made good after the skill tree update. Charges were fine I guess, they were just fine. Finally, this is something I left for the last bit of this review, but Armageddon suffers from the same problem as most other multiplayer zombie game does: grinding. This game has a lot of grinding. It's simply not fun playing this game over and over again just to get a single weapon, though if you're a good survivor, you earn a ton of silver bricks to get new weapons. However, the same cannot be said for zombies. If you look over here, the reward for playing zombie and survivor is literally night and day by comparison. You simply earn more playing as survivor, and while I find myself playing zombies more often for the hell of it, zombies get paid barely any silver bricks. Of course, parts of that grinding are mitigated by the massive rewards for completing something that I didn't mention, which is the task system. Divided into daily and weekly tasks, they usually dish out a huge amount of gold, silver bricks, and experience points whenever you complete them, which is great since it cuts down on the grinding, plus weapon unlocks are completely level based and you can buy them early. The problem lies within how some tasks just takes too damn long to complete. Like, having to win as a volunteering zombie 75 times is just infuriatingly long. Come the fuck on, I can't dedicate that much time to the game just to get the minigun early. Before anyone asks me, Yes, I did get around to completing enough tasks to unlock the minigun. Also, pro servers exist, exclusive to high level players, but all the pro servers I've played on were empty, so I can't really say anything about them. Now with everything covered, that should be the end of my review. Armageddon as a game is of high quality, with a development team that built upon the foundations laid by an earlier iteration of the remake to improve the experience significantly, even solving some of Roblox Zombies' greatest sins of having unbalanced asymmetrical teams and succeeding in making both sides fun to play. There are issues obviously, like how some zombies aren't properly balanced or the lack of any real challenge for the survivors on certain maps, or if the zombie team has zero upgrades for some reason. But it's nothing that the Muscle Embassy teams can't solve, right? Right? Yeah, this is what the entire video has been building up to. For context, there has been 2 major content updates so far for Armageddon. The first one was the Iron and Honor update, though I started playing before that update. That was when I got the earliest footage, which most of my issues at the time was that the music was really annoying since there was no variation, it was just the same guitar riff over and over again. After the Iron Honor update, I started to enjoy the game more often, and this was the point where I thought nothing could go wrong for Armageddon. And then came East of the Timeline update. Holy fucking shit, I never thought it was possible to ruin the game this fast.
No, fuck off.
A lot of the positive things I had to say in the first part of the review literally went straight out the window when the East of the Timeline update came along. This is the update I was alluding to that changed the zombie upgrade system to the skill tree, and it was also what I was talking about that made Kami, Hazard, and Tank a lot better to play as. It's also the update that introduced zombie skins and a bunch of other stuff, like a new map.
What the fuck is that?
Actually, it isn't a new map, but a rework of an old map called Lumber. Now, originally, Lumber was one of the most difficult maps to survive on. It was small, cramped, and had a massive toxic zone that was decreased in the Iron Honor update. I didn't mention it in the first part because, well, they reworked it, obviously. I was curious as to how they reworked the map, but yep, Lumber is a fucking Team Fortress 2 map. This map was fucking horrid. I know people hated the old map for being difficult to survive, but I loved the old version. It was just so much better and challenging. The tightly packed map was in almost every way superior to the rework that literally just ripped the layout of Sawmill from Team Fortress 2 and called it a day. The rework just upscaled everything to be ridiculously huge, and even worse, I remember when I talked about toxic zones? Oh yeah, Lumber's rework, when it was first released, removed all the fucking toxic zones. There's no toxic zones in the map. Survivors had complete free navigation throughout the entire map. It's been changed now because they added actual toxic zones, which is a change that I wholly welcome because letting survivors roam the map freely without ever being punished for straying too far was just stupid, which is why I hate the arena map so much. But you know what this map introduced? A new idea called zombie-only zones or survivor-free zones. These are basically areas in the map that are exclusive to zombies. Survivors trying to pass through these barriers are blocked by an invisible wall, which is usually represented by a cloud of gas, a very thick one. I get the intention behind these areas to allow zombies to traverse through areas and possibly ambush survivors without the risk of getting ganked by them. But there's one problem. Lumber was the first map to introduce this, with Prison receiving a revision that added these zombie-only areas in unused areas of that map. For some absolutely incomprehensible reason that I cannot fucking fathom, the developers apparently never thought of how fucking abusable and capable these spots were. Actually, this plays into a very specific issue introduced by this update. So, remember the skill tree the zombies got with the update? Well, all of the playable zombies now have some of the most unbalanced shit in the game. Period. To contextualize just how ridiculously strong zombies are in this update, one of the new skills for Hazard Zombie lets them spit multiple gas balls at a time. Now, ordinarily, this wouldn't be a problem. There's a long cooldown timer, right? Newsflash, fucker. There's a cooldown upgrade that lets you spam these gas balls like there's no tomorrow. So take that into account and combine it with how the Lumber map has rooftops that only zombies can have access to. Survivors can't go onto these rooftops, so I guess they need to go fuck themselves. Oh, and you could have done this type of shit as a Hazard Zombie on Evacuation, but it got fixed soon after. Just see for yourself.
What the fuck?
No, I mean, I missed because they're invincible. But you see?
With like HP damage. Holy fuck, that's crazy.
I'm killing everyone.
Have you seen what is this fucking update?
This is how I was able to spawn as a tank within 17 seconds of a round starting one time.
Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright.
Also, what I meant by fix soon after is that something happened during the writing of the script, which was the release of the second portion of the East of the Timeline update called The Blood Moon Rises. This update actually fixes multiple things, which is great to see because it knocked the Hazard Zombie down a couple levels and made them more balanced, so you can't spam gas anymore on helicopters since they don't stack damage. This is great, but it comes at a cost to the Kami Zombie where they can't stack damage with the gas explosion skill anymore, but it's acceptable in my eyes. That being said, it reworked a previous map that got removed during the East of the Timeline update called Mall. I actually quite liked the original Mall map. It was simple and tight. Unforgiving, but that's what made it fun for me. But it got removed because the developers wanted to remake it. Fair enough. So what's the new remake like? Well, they kept the toxic zones this time, unlike what they did to Lumber. Great! Except it only applies to like 2 areas of the map, with one of them being so inconsequently small that's actually really fucking stupid. Like, why even put it in there? On a single ammo box?
What? What's the point? Why?
Really, everything about this update pissed me off. I just don't understand why they would go so far to remove features of the game that made it like stand out from every other generic team-based zombie game on Roblox. We've seen the rise and fall of so many games like the Undead Coming in the past, and we all know exactly the one example I'm thinking of. None of these new things are good. Absolutely fucking none of it. What's the point? What's the fucking point? I feel like the East of the Timeline update is indicative of the overall state of zombie games on Roblox. More importantly though, it dictates Armageddon's future as a game. Tired, generic, and repetitive. I held off this video for a long time, but what really threw me off was that I had everything in mind with how the video was going to be before East of the Timeline update. It was going to be a positive, glowing review of Armageddon. As much as some of the issues bothered me, I did truly enjoy what Muscle Embassy had to offer. It was, for a time, a really good game, fixing and avoiding the issues that plague so many other similar games. But now that it's been a while since the update, probably weeks now by the time I upload this video, it feels like everything I had planned out beforehand was forcefully taken from me, mashed into a grinder, then given back to me in a choppy mess, presented as if it was a good thing that I must enjoy and I must like as the developers intended. These days on Roblox, creativity is often traded for something that can leech off the wallets of players unwittingly playing an utterly worthless game. For a time, I was genuinely hopeful that Armageddon could fix the mistakes that plagued the Undead Coming from Never Die Interactive, especially in how they were able to turn zombies from an unfun experience that you'd be better off just leaving the game running in the background to do something else into something genuinely enjoyable, to the point where although incentives to play zombies willingly were still low, the game may have encouraged players like me to play as the undead simply because it was more fun. There were some hiccups in the updates that came before the East of the Timeline update, like with Iron and Honor, which added the arena map that, from what I've heard, people generally didn't like for its blandness and simplicity. But what changed? This is the biggest question I had after going into the update. While I had been in the game's official Discord for some time, I had never really gotten deeply involved, nor was I reading any of the channels and messages beyond surface level interactions. After the update, curiosity got the better of me on why certain directions were taken with the East of the Timeline update. So, while in contact with someone whose perspective is admittedly biased, I slowly began to piece together the answer to that question. What I got wasn't what I expected, but honestly, I didn't know what I was expecting from a development team that sounded like they hated the Undead Coming and everything the game stood for and what made it unique. Muscle Embassy might have built upon Never Die Interactive's development choices and chosen to deviate from some designs to improve certain features, which is fine because creative decisions are different between development teams, but with their intentions to diversify the game's audience to be more noob-friendly, implementing abusable zombie-only areas, alienating Armageddon's veterans in favor of making the game a dumbed-down version of what it once used to be, and planning the removal of core gameplay features that made Armageddon a challenging experience instead of building upon it, primarily gas masks and reducing toxic zones to barely existing at this point. I simply don't have any confidence in Muscle Embassy's future goals for the game. Everything that the developers have talked about with these future changes feels like a somewhat stubborn refusal to accept the idea that their planned changes might be inherently hurting the game rather than benefiting it, only changing it after wide community criticism, yet signing it off with a big sigh as if the changes that makes a game more challenging than a tired repetitive slaughterfest bothers them significantly. Clearly, Armageddon's developers want to cater to a bigger demographic, but where has that gotten them? All this time spent reimagining the game in their own vision, but at what cost? All it feels like them sacrificing any value that makes the game unique just so they could suck up to the lowest common denominator. Yet, it doesn't seem to have gotten them anywhere either. Regardless, what I really want to talk about isn't just the innumerable mistakes made by Muscle Embassy in this update for Armageddon, but rather how it led to me having a bit of an epiphany about the state of modern Roblox games, or specifically modern Roblox zombie games. You don't have the classics like Star Battle's COD Zombie adaptations, That Time's Reason for Life, or Placer Builder's Reason to Die games anymore, to which, as flawed as they were, they still felt like a genuine passion project that truly showed the near-limitless creativity that Roblox developers had at one point, even with how limited their tools were back then. Nowadays, you mostly get the same copy-pasted Call of Duty or Left 4 Dead knockoff, or attempting to draw on both of those games' formula without understanding why it worked, which is ironically what later led to the death of the Reason to Die series. Games like Zombie Stories, Undead Strike, Dread, and Dead Slay all suffer from the issue of simply trying too hard to adopt the formula that worked for their mainstream inspirations, but without understanding why the balancing, art direction, or consistency in those games were so good. The Undead Coming is a weird mirror reflection of that history. Starting as a simple, classic game that defined an era of Roblox games, then becoming a remake under Never Die that tried to do some justice only to slip up, then culminating with Muscle Embassy crashing into the game with ideas better off being an entirely new project than being implemented into a Roblox game the equivalent of a house of cards. It just feels like the quality of each update just makes things slowly turn Armageddon to shit. If anything, Armageddon has shown me the reality of how a single update can ruin a game, no matter how small a studio or a game development group is. It feels reminiscent of AAA gaming studios making some of the biggest mistakes in the gaming industry. Truly, East of the Timeline is the Battlefield 2042 of Roblox updates. The Undead Coming Armageddon is a game by Muscle Embassy. It's a remake of the classic Undead Coming game, though Armageddon itself builds upon the features and content that originally existed from when another game development group, Never Die Interactive, took it upon themselves to remake the Undead Coming before moving on to another project. The game pits two teams against each other, the survivors and the zombies, like a typical Roblox team versus team zombie survivor experience, though with considerable improvements to the formula that allowed players to freely choose whether they want to play as a zombie or not. If it was earlier to the game, I would be here praising it for what it used to be, a challenging experience that to some extent amended the mistake that killed other Roblox zombie games of a similar caliber to Armageddon. However, what killed the game for me wasn't necessarily the bad balancing, but rather the direction Muscle Embassy intends to take the game. East of the Timeline felt like an attempt at beginning a dramatic divergence from what made the game initially popular, with a stronger turn to appealing new players while turning away the veteran players who have likely sunk literal hours into the game and removing a lot of the core features that additionally ruin the balance between survivor and zombie team on such an unprecedented scale. I don't think Armageddon will have a sustainable future as a standout experience compared to other zombie games. Regardless, I wish I could have more positive things to say about the game, but the East of the Timeline update just ruined things for me, and the release of the Blood Moon Rises update feels too little too late. Overall, Armageddon was a breath of fresh air that was quickly sucked back in and puffed back out as a cloud of polluted waste.